hope you had a nice, enjoyable 3-day weekend for two fathers with toddlers. I kind of dig the whole work in session daycare open type thing. Not a big fan of holidays much anymore. Those random holidays where you have to entertain a toddler who's throwing tantrums on the ground and has one shoe on and is shirtless at one point. But happy Tuesday to you. Thanks for tuning in again to another episode of the 5-Tool Baseball Podcast. Joined once again, as always, by Drew Bishop. And Drew, I tweeted this out last night, and I used to, hearing scouts over the years talk about putting a schedule together in February and playing weatherman and coordinating your pitching matchups. And, for us, it's mainly on the high school side that we're seeing things, but those guys do college and high school JUCO as well. And I was like, I always kind of heard like, oh, it's a pain to put this schedule together. I never quite understood it because it's not something I ever had to do. But I literally spent yesterday being a dad and then making a schedule for this weekend's tournament, the big Syntex first pitch tournament in Austin, and then just trying to give my wife an outline for March. And making a schedule is tough, man. It's tough. There's an art form to it, and you've got to be able to adjust on the fly with pitching changes. And fingers crossed we don't have to deal with weather this weekend, but it looks like we might. So that's going to be a new animal to deal with as well.
Yeah, well, first off, shout out to Highview Learning Center. They do not close on President's Day.
Oh, so they're anti-president, huh? Well, yeah. Shout out to them, because Hyde Park Baptist was definitely closed, and we missed them on Monday.
Yeah, no, Coy had a full day at school yesterday, but then we went to swim lessons, so we had him for that. But yeah, so it enabled me to get out to a scrimmage yesterday to see Prosper and Hebron play. But yeah, no, the schedule thing's no joke. I mean, I know there's a large contingency of scouts, and not just the local guys, but the big name guys, the higher ups, the suits, whatever you want to call them. They're all trying to find a way to get down here on Thursday to see Chase Shores throw. And this is one of his outings in the Metroplex. And I think a lot of people are trying to get in to see that, so as just being an easier trip than going all the way out to Midland. But yeah, so I know there's a large number of people rooting for the weather to be okay enough on Thursday for Chase to stay on schedule that day. But yeah, it's you can have a perfect plan and it goes right out the window, and it affects like the next several weeks worth of stuff. Yeah. If you have an idea of what you want to see. So I guess lesson learned, you don't need to spend too much time in the future until you get some of these things out of the way and see what you need to see up front. But a couple of the recommendations I've gotten from some of the veterans have been, if you want to see pitching, get it out of the way quick, because you can always go see the hitters. So
that's true.
We'll see how we can follow that model. But yeah, it seems like some of the tournaments are already starting to push stuff around and move to different days and different venues already up here in the Dallas area. So, but like I said, I was lucky to get out and see Prosper versus Hebron yesterday. Some big young arms in that for sure.
Let's talk about that, because you're texting me about seeing a 2025 up to 90, and then you send me some video, and like, yeah, you weren't lying, man. That's not just like an arm strength, super physical, bigger than everybody else, 90 miles an hour. That's an easy, I've got mega upside 90 miles an hour. Like that looked like some really good stuff.
Yeah, I know Marcos has some offers from, I think Texas and TCU have offered him already, but it is easy to see why, man. It is easy. The ball moves, but he did get hit a little bit. So that was interesting. But, as important as the stuff is, how they respond to getting hit is great to see. I know when Skip was at Texas, he would love to get out and see a lot of the high school outings just as much as some of the summer ones, just because you might get a chance to see a guy struggle or be in a really intense environment. And that can be just as important for the evaluation process as just a guy going out there and dominating with good stuff. But that was what was as impressive as the stuff to me was he kept throwing it in there. He kept attacking and didn't seem rattled by getting hit around a little bit. Coincidentally, the first batter was another 2025 Luke Billings, and he first pitch of the inning was 89 miles an hour, and we got a 94 exit velo off the wall for the first pitch of his inning. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think we posted that video as well, but it was fun because you could tell they'd squared off before, and those two are considered two of the best 25s in Texas. But Hebron had another 25 too, Ethan Hunt. I couldn't find him on Twitter, so he may not have it yet. But tall, projectable, flashed a good changeup. He wasn't throwing as hard as Marcos was, but he was low 80s, and it's easy. Comes out. Another guy like he had a couple pass balls happen to him, and he didn't bother him. He just kept throwing it in there. So he's another one for Hebron. So they got two 2025s that are going to be something to build off of, along with two top of the order 2023s. Switch hitting outfielder Aiden Howard, really impressive, really good athlete.
Yeah, that one stood out to me when you published that. Just the athleticism, especially the swing from the left side. It looks like he's got a chance to be a really good player.
Yeah, definitely. He's an athlete. Got to see him throw in the outfield. He moves well. I think he plays center field in summer ball. Plays for the Dallas Tigers. But then they have another 2023 Lane Hayworth. I think I'm pronouncing that right, but he led off for them. Really good center fielder. I mean, you'd have to be to move Aiden out of playing center field. So left-handed throwing, left-handed hitting outfielder Lane Hayworth. He squared up a ball, hit a double down the line, opposite way. Knows what he's doing. Looks like he has a really good feel. Plays for the Stick Scout team, the 23 age group. But yeah, he's got some players. I was impressed with them. And then Prosper didn't play all their frontline guys, and they didn't throw many of their starters, but they're loaded, man. They've got a lot of good players. Cole Giametta is going to be really good. 2024. We've talked about him before. Billings, I got to see him catch. And he's advanced at the plate. I mean, he had some really good swings yesterday for 2025, and he looks the part, but he looks like he has good instincts too. He moves around well on the bases. So I think Prosper's going to have a good year.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. I mean, that's you rattle off a lot of those names. And speaking of teams that look like they're going to have a really good year, I got some eyes on Lake Travis for the first time on Saturday when they scrimmage Georgetown. And we're at that point of the year where people are kind of geared up for tournaments and getting their pitching in the right order. And some teams started district play last night, which is crazy to me, but it's just kind of the reality of the high school set schedule sometimes. But Lake Travis, I've seen some really good teams around Central Texas and in the Houston area and San Antonio area. Lake Travis to me is the best team I've seen so far. We were talking about it before we recorded. Like, they bring guys off the bench that would be all district starters at really good 6A programs. I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches over there in terms of the talent they have. And they've got a really good mix of physical guys and athleticism. And, I got an opportunity to see two 2023 righties on the mound. Jackson Baker, a guy that we've talked about before, Alabama commitment, sinker slider guy. He was up to 89 miles an hour. When he doesn't overthrow that sinker, he comes out of the hand the right way. I mean, it is a true sinker with some really good late life. And that slider too has kind of got a little bit of that Frisbee element as well because of the arm slot. He's got, I was encouraged because I wondered how big he was, and there's still some physical projection remaining for sure. I think that's going to be a guy that over time is going to sit comfortably in the low 90s. And he'll be able to run it up harder as he gets older, but it might take a little bit of life off of that stuff. But I mean, he's going to be one of the best starting pitchers, I think, in this area. But the guy that started the game for them, OJ Gonzalez, he actually also hit 5th in the lineup and banged a double off the wall on the fly on left center field. Pitched 3 innings, held 86 to 88, all 3 innings. Kind of a 2-plane breaking ball, but spun it well, took it off, took some velocity off at times to kind of change the shape. Front doored it occasionally to right-handers. Threw a lot of strikes. You made a great point about wanting to see how guys respond when they get hit around a little bit, because in the summer games you might just they might just bring in another guy, but oftentimes in high school, especially like a scrimmage, like, hey, you're going to throw this amount of innings. In a high school game, it's like, hey man, you got to give us some length. Like you are a guy, and he got hit around a little bit the second time through the order. Some of it was, didn't get some defensive help, a couple of bloop shots here or there, but I love when guys come right back and they keep throwing strikes. Like they don't get phased. Like it's like, okay, like I've got to keep throwing strikes. I've got to keep competing and challenging these guys. And that's what OJ Gonzalez did. Didn't really see a third pitch. Didn't necessarily have to get to one. Although if you kind of consider manipulating the shape of a breaking ball and stuff like that, a third pitch, he had that element to it. But uncommitted 2023, I think that he's going to play a really key part for Lake Travis this upcoming season. I mean, he could be a guy that ends up, it could be Baker and Gonzalez as their as a couple of their main starters, with Luke Jackson, obviously a really talented senior as well. Didn't get to see Pierce George pitch, but he obviously will be in the mix. But they've got such a loaded group. And then I've been waiting for a hitter in the 22 class to kind of reach out and grab me. I've seen a lot of big names. And part of it is sometimes these guys just don't get pitched to enough, or they don't see enough quality stuff. Caden Kent was that dude, man. You talk about competing. He got buzzed unintentionally, left on left matchup, just got buzzed up and in first at bat of the game for him. And 2 pitches later, he whacks a triple to the wall in right center field, flying out of the box. He hit a double later. Played shortstop well. He did boot one on a slow roller, but made like 3 or 4 other plays that weren't easy plays at shortstop, and that's pretty good considering I think he's probably a future third baseman, maybe even a second baseman. But he handled shortstop well. But man, he hit, and he looks great physically. He still hasn't filled out all the way through the upper half. I think he's a little bit taller, but he swung the bat exceptionally well, and he's kind of got that Jared Thomas thing going, to where you watch how guys track pitches and take pitches, and it just seems like they really see the ball well. They're really analyzing what they're seeing quickly. They're picking stuff up out of the hands. They've got a plane in there. They're not jumping and flinching all over the place. And Caden Kent's got a lot of that about him in the batter's box. And if we're naming left-handed hitters in the state that are seniors, you're not calling many before you get to Caden Kent in terms of a pure hit tool. I think that he's poised to be a really great player at Texas A&M. I think he's going to be a pro. It's easier to bet on these guys when they've got dad genes that were in the big leagues. And obviously Jeff Kent was one of the best second basemen of all time. So he's got that sort of thing working for him. But you just go down the list of Lake Travis. Ethan Calder, I'm looking at my notes, left-handed hitter, plays center for them typically, but he's playing some first base right now because Cole Johnson, one of our favorite guys, is out with a fractured thumb. He smacks a double to the wall, and I'm like, man, who is this kid? This is a good-looking left-handed swing. And look down the list, and he's committed to Baylor. And it's just like, this state, just kind of, you can show up and find one of those guys, and it's like, oh yeah, he's committed to a major D1 program. But go down the list. I mean, Liam Hendricks is a guy that stood out to me. Hank Benny's a guy I really like. He hit a hard double in his only at bat that I saw. Cooper Scott, an interesting 2023 for them. Big time physical guy. He hit cleanup for them, and he is a presence in the middle of the lineup. Big time bat speed, big time exit velocity. The swing can get a little long. There's going to be some swing and miss in there, but he lets it eat in the batter's box. An uncommitted guy. He's got a bat first profile, but he's going to be a guy that's going to be a future power hitter, probably going to be one of the top home run hitters in this area. And then you go down the list of there's some of their 2024s. Wyatt Gatlin, talking to Coach Rogers, it was his first taste of varsity. Left-handed pitcher, struck out the side. He's only up to 81, but he spun a breaking ball. Guys didn't pick it up very well. And then Gavin Schlotterbach was catching back there. He had a 1.97 in-game pop And this is a guy that's coming off the bench to catch some innings for Lake Travis. So they've got a chance to be a really, really good team this year.
Yeah, we had Wyatt at camp, and you knew there's some pitchability there. Always liked him. He was always really young, but he was always one of the better kids for his age group. So that's exciting to hear that he's doing well for them. But yeah, it's tough. Like, it's kind of it's a tricky proposition for some of these coaches, because you have guys that like someone like a Wyatt that could definitely help your varsity pitching staff, but how much is he going to pitch? Does it help him more to be down on JV and log some innings and then maybe move him up later? But that's always a tricky conversation, because I know some kids get deflated by not potentially being on varsity, but at some point you're going to be, if you're going to keep playing. And at this stage in your career, it's important to get innings. A couple of things that stuck out to me so far over these scrimmages, and I understand that some of it has to do with the fact that these are guys that are trying out and trying to figure out what they've got with some of them. But, overall, and you saw this some this summer, like there's some guys that have like really good stuff that they just don't throw a lot of fastballs. And that's something I think is that changes a lot when you get to the college level. I think people pitch with their fastball a lot more. But like we've seen some big name guys that have really good stuff that throw a lot more breaking balls than you would expect to see from guys that have the velo that they do. So that's been something that I've been paying attention to. And as a result, you don't see a lot of changeups from guys that throw hard. So it's kind of hard to get a full picture of these guys' repertoire. And as a result, I think a lot of the changeup is an underdeveloped pitch at this stage for most kids.
Yes.
And, as we've seen for a long time, if you can throw a right-on-right changeup at the college level consistently, you're going to be successful. And I think it probably has to do with a lot of these guys just haven't seen it a lot. But that's a devastating pitch if you have it in your arsenal. But it does make sense that some of these guys that dominate in high school, why would you bother throwing it and giving them a chance to actually put it in play if you would normally blow it by them? But I've noticed that. And but one of the things that I've noticed that you have to do a lot with some of these top players is to evaluate them. Look, some of them are playing competition that they are, head and shoulders better than physically. So I like to watch and see if guys, does the game look easy? Are they intense? Do they take things seriously in between innings? That's the kind of stuff that I look for with some of these top guys to see if they can separate. But a guy that did that for me was D. Kennedy from Benbrook. I saw him Friday afternoon. Just good looking athlete, runs well. But man, he gets in the box and he looks to do damage, and he had mature at bats. I think it was pretty clear that they were trying to pitch around him. And, as a result, he took some pitches, but like you said with Jared, like the way he takes pitches gives you a feel that he knows what he's seeing and he knows what he's looking for. But man, he squared a couple balls up. I know we posted a video of it on Friday, but D. Kennedy looked good, man. One time A&M commit, I guess he decommitted around right before Coach Schlossnagle was hired, I believe. But he's going to be a good get for someone playing with that Royals scout team. I think we talked about when we were going through the rankings, he's a guy that's going to play somewhere in the middle of the field. Reminded me a little bit of Trey Richardson from Baylor, who Kendall likes. But he can definitely play shortstop. Kind of like a Vasos too. Like you can see that guy playing shortstop in college. It may not be his ultimate landing spot, but he can definitely do it. He's going to be a middle of the field player just by the way he runs and his instincts. But I was really impressed with D and enjoyed watching him play. I was going to get over and see Chisholm Trail, but scheduling, like we talked about, the weather came in and
traffic, weather, scheduling, it's a lot of things we got to juggle.
But luckily, for my sake, I've figured out the coaches that are really good about communicating, and some of the schools do a better job with the Twitter and posting updates there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it's a puzzle piece for sure, trying to figure out, who's pitching when, where, and all that. But we're starting to get the hang of it and figure out who's on top of things and who will let you know. The kids do a good job of letting us know if they think you might be coming. I had to shout out to Cooper Strawn. I was trying to figure out when he was pitching, because he was pitching close to my house over here in a tournament, and they've changed him from Thursday to Friday and venues and all that. And he's kept me in the loop, and that I might actually get to see him now that his times moved around, because it seems like right now everyone's kind of revolving around that Chase Shore start. But yeah, once we'll figure out when he's throwing and kind of go from there. But the good thing is there's a lot of games to choose from. And I know up here, there's a lot of turf fields, which helps a lot too.
Yes. Yeah. The turf fields always help. Yeah. And going back to something you said about the change-ups, if you're a pitcher and you throw a change-up and, you work on it, throw it in warm-ups, please. Throw it in warm-ups. Even if it's just one before every inning, throw it, signal it, tell everybody, hey, here comes the changeup. Because even that one pitch or two pitches or whatever, at least gives us a little bit of an idea. Like, Cole Phillips is a good example of that. Cole Phillips never had to get to the changeup, but he showed it in warmups, and every single scout there noted it, because that's, like, if you can just get even if it's a one pitch, to get the visual look at it, how it comes out of the hand, the break, the miles per hour, that sort of thing, it helps for sure. So yeah, there might be games where you don't even have to use it, but if you work on it and you throw it in warm up so we can get an idea of it. And it's on that note with changeups, I got a chance to see Hudson Hamilton pitch for Grand Oaks in Friday at Tompkins, which Tompkins is loaded lineup. And talk about throwing strikes, man. Hudson Hamilton throws strikes. He goes after guys. That's kind of the report we got on him. He's fiery. He's going to attack. He pitches with a ton of confidence. And that's who he was, through a lot of strikes. When Jace LaValliette got on there, so a big time left-handed hitter, he started going to the changeup. He showed some confidence in it. He actually got a swing and miss against LaValliette in one of the at-bats with the changeup, but really attacked guys, upper 80s, bumped 90 a few times, kept the fastball down, spinning the slider, took some off a little bit on occasionally to get it over the plate, tried burying it on occasion, but I just love guys that get out there and throw strikes, and they're not bothered by the fact that, oh my gosh, and an Ole Miss commits leading off, and an A&M signees in the 3-hole, and then there's a Wichita State signing and a Rice commitment, and like there's going to be some pitchers that face Tompkins this year and just melt, because they're going to look at that lineup and they're going to look in that dugout and they're going to see 6'5" Jace LaValliette over there, and Jack Little and Drew Markle, and then Landon West, the big old physical dude hitting the 5-hole, and it's gonna bother them. They're gonna get shook. Yeah. And that's not Hudson Hamilton's DNA. Now it's a little easier to do that in a scrimmage, but that's who Hudson Hamilton is. You talk to people around that high school program. He's a fiery guy. He gets after people, and I feel very good that he's going to be one of the best right-handed pitchers in the state for his class. It looks like it's going to be a future 3-pitch mix. Looks like, the breaking ball and the changeup are going to be able to get some swings and misses. I think the fastball over time is going to be in that upper 80s, low 90s range consistently. I think he's probably going to be able to carry that, but he's going to throw strikes. And I think he's got some feel for executing in command already as well, but he's got a chance for sure. And that Grand Oaks team is going to be a strong team as well. Larry Drake plays shortstop for them. Rice commitment 2023 class. He was a big time performer with the glove in our events this summer. He's grown a little bit. He's a little bit more physical, which I think is great news for Rice. Made a couple of strong plays defensively, so he's going to play a key part for them. Daniel Garcia was up to 86 mile an hour, uncommitted arm in the 2023 class. I think he's got a chance. He's kind of got a little bit of a stab in the arm action right now, but you can tell that there's some athleticism. There's some arm quickness. There's already some present velocity. When he was right and he got on time, he's a guy that's going to miss some bats for that Grand Oaks team as well. And then Bryce Dwyer, who catches for them. He's got a chance to be an all-around solid catcher in that 2023 class. But, that Grand Oaks area, with Grand Oaks, Oak Ridge, the Woodlands, and that's going to be a fantastic district race because, all those teams are going to be really strong. And you can go back to Georgetown, who scrimmaged Lake Travis. You mentioned kind of watching how guys just how they move on the field, their sort of mannerisms, their body language. I like to call it the slow heartbeat kind of guys. And Houston signing Zach Zavala is like that. I think he's probably going to be a second baseman at the next level, but he played second and short for Georgetown. Physically, he's not the tallest guy at all, but he's physically going to be ready for college baseball when he arrives at Houston. Can run a little bit, very mature at bats, got some hand-eye coordination, some feel for the barrel, can run. He's one of those guys that nothing overwhelms him on the baseball field. And those guys can really stand out at the high school level. And he stood out that way. It's a really veteran Georgetown team. They got a lot of seniors going to play a key part for them. Maybe not the most talented team in terms of, oh, wow, they're just loaded with D1 prospects, but a really good, solid high school baseball team. Zachary Mazuk, the Baylor signee, who we know, 5-55 diet catcher, only caught a couple of innings. They're just kind of working some guys in there. Physical, good-looking kid, not afraid to let it rip in the batter's box, really takes his at-bat seriously. I liked what I saw from him. And then uncommitted 2022 arm Wade Denton was up to 88 miles an hour, sharp slider in the high 70s, showed a changeup. I think that he's talented enough to go pitch somewhere. Maybe JUCO junior college or D2, mid-major D1, but kind of a relief profile for me. But there's some arm strength there. There's some feel for a slider that looks sharp at times. There's a changeup in there that he's got some confidence in. He's going to play a key part for those guys, and I think that he's definitely talented enough to keep pitching at the next level.
Yeah, well, you mentioned a team like Georgetown that just does things the right way. That's what's exciting now that we're going to start to get into the games, is that throwing strikes matters, playing catch matters, and that's what'll win. Like, I don't think people understand that that's what wins in college too. So if you do it at this level, you're going to give yourself a big leg up and a chance to win. Everyone likes the stuff and guys that throw hard, but if you don't throw strikes, you're not going to win. Right.
You don't throw strikes, you're not going to pitch at a lot of these places.
Right. That's the thing, is like, the teams that I've seen that look like they're going to have a chance are the ones that play fundamentally sound, that are well coached. I've seen a couple of teams that are super talented so far that I would have a hard time seeing them win just because they don't play good baseball and they don't throw enough strikes.
Mm-hmm.
It's real evident the guys that go out there competing to throw strikes and trust in their defense and, having a good catcher matters too. I mean,
yes.
It's just so deflating to not have a good catcher. And it just, takes away pitchers' confidence. Guys are taking free bases all the time, but it is like the guys that throw strikes and compete and just stay in the zone and change speeds. Like, you don't have to throw super hard to be successful. I think a lot of people get away from that mindset. And this industry perpetuates that a little bit. We get caught up with the radar gun and guys, how hard they throw into a net sometimes, that doesn't, if it doesn't translate, it doesn't do you any good to throw that hard if you're not going to throw strikes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I think that's something that I've seen, and it's real obvious the guys that go out on the mound with that intent. Everyone understands that you're trying to get seen and hit 90 or whatever that magic radar gun reading is. But, now that we're getting into the real games, it's going to be exciting to see the guys that throttle that down and pitch,
mm-hmm.
Because that's what's successful. And so that's one of the things I'm looking forward to the most. And you saw it happen as the scrimmages went on. You can tell real quickly that the cream rises to the top, and the guys that keep from making mistakes are the ones that are probably going to be the ones that are successful. I mean, you saw it on the college level this weekend. I mean, it's
you did. Yeah.
Teams that take care of business and throw strikes and play catch and don't beat themselves have a chance to be really good. You know, a lot of times people are like, oh, well, they don't, you know, they're not a bunch of high draft pick guys and all that. But you know what? Like, that's all great, but it doesn't win you games. You know, it helps. I mean, yeah, you want to see guys that can do some impressive stuff physically, but if you hit a home run 1 out of 10 at bats and strike out the other 9, you know, you're probably not helping your team that much. You know, it can be better than that. But yeah, it was interesting watching this weekend. There's always, you know, that opening weekend's always a punch in the face to some teams that just aren't ready. And, you know, you can tell that there's some of the northern teams haven't been outside as much and aren't as sharp. But yeah, I mean, you saw the teams that played clean baseball. Most of them ended up winning this weekend.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's nothing more deflating than the inability to get your outs on time and the inability to do the simple things like playing catch and making throws. Like it just has this really negative energy that just can linger over any team, and it's hard to shake that. And it's, you know, at the high school level, sometimes guys wear that for a few innings, and that's one thing I always like paying attention to is, you know, how do pitchers respond to that? How do position players respond to either making an error or a teammate making an error or whatever, you know, and just kind of the energy that follows that, you know, because dealing with failure is going to be part of it. But yeah, it's, you know, there's a big difference at the college level between the teams that consistently get their outs on time and the teams that don't. Because you're oftentimes facing a lot of lineups that have the ability to punish you anytime you make a mistake. But the strike throwing, I mean, it's, you know, it's one thing I keep in mind a lot when I watch pitchers at the high school level is you got to, in the back of your head, you have to understand that these guys, they're still going to have a big development period, you know, and there's, whether that's physically, mentally, mechanically, whatever it is. But, you know, one of the things that if you go to the right place or you train yourself the right way, like, it's not hard to develop velocity anymore. It's not easy. And what I mean by that is you don't need to show up to a bullpen twice a week and throw a few pitches and work on one tweak. And it's like, voila, I'm throwing 8 miles an hour harder. Like there's a process and a ton of work that goes into it. But, you know, we're seeing it across all levels that you can develop velocity, you know? So but can you develop command? Can you develop execution? Can you develop feel for pitching? I would argue that those things are tougher to develop. So it's always something I keep in mind when I see a guy and it's like, oh, you know, he's only thrown in the mid 80s. Well, is he maxed out physically? Is there still some room there? What does the delivery look like? What does the arm speed look like? Because he can get older and mature more, and there's probably going to be some more miles per hour that come. And maybe he has great shape to his fastball and it kind of plays up a little. I've seen guys throw in the low 90s in scrimmages without good fastball shape and it gets hammered. I've seen guys throw in the low 80s with good fastball shape and guys don't see it. You know, they might see it a little better second or third time through the order, but you know, it's just sometimes guys will pitch to the radar and stuff like that. But yeah, we're going to see it when these games start that matter, you know, when you're out there and you've got to give your team length and you've got to win the game. Can you execute your stuff and get ahead in counts? And because, man, like the dudes that got ahead in counts that I've seen in scrimmages lived easy. The dudes that didn't, there's a lot of really good hitters at this level that will take their walks. I was watching Tompkins and rattling off all the guys in their lineup, Jack Little and Jace LaValliette and Drew Markle and Landon West. Like those guys took their walks. Like if you don't throw them strikes, they're not going to expand very often. And I got news for you. Jace LaValliette can really run for a 6'5" guy. Jack Little was 4-2 down the line and he was a little slow out of the box. He stole second base on a pick off the first base, and the first baseman didn't even have time to throw to second. He was already there. And that's how fast that guy is. You know, and Landon West, man, he gets in a good count. He'll hammer mistakes. So yeah, it's just, yeah, we saw at the college weekend, like, if you don't, it's one of the reasons why we'll see upsets later early in the year, like a Liberty going to Florida and winning a series there, and Oklahoma State playing the game a little bit better than Vanderbilt, even though Vanderbilt racked up all those strikeouts. Oklahoma State played the game
45,
a ton of them. But at the end, Oklahoma State just kind of made a couple more plays, like playing catch, throwing strikes, competing. Like do you think, like, we're looking at this Texas team, we'll use them as an example because obviously, our lives revolved around that program for the last 15 years or whatever it is. But I think they're a great example of, I think that we're in agreement that for their draft eligible guys this year, they do not have a first round pick. Maybe they'll have a second round pick, but I would even say they're probably going to have a bunch of day two guys. Day two meaning that round 3 through 10 range. But you watch them play, and they're a phenomenal college baseball team. It's because they have a lot of those guys that are, they're talented, but they play the game. They look at what Pete Hansen did in his first start, like just changing speeds and throwing strikes and commanding the baseball and executing and spin. And, Tristan Stevens comes in on a Saturday, and it's, what he throw? Like, I don't even think he broke 70 pitches through 6 innings, because that's just what he does. He'll challenge you with strikes, and he'll keep you off balance, and he'll get it ahead in the count, and he'll use his defense. And oh, by the way, his defense makes plays. They play catch. They make the routine plays. They get their outs on time. Like, that to me is why Texas is the number 1 team in the country. Yeah, they're talented. Yeah, they got a bunch of guys that are going to get drafted, but they get their outs on time. They compete. And they punish mistakes. Like, they'll take their walks if you walk them. If you make a mistake, they'll hit it 450 feet like Ivan Melendez does. But they throw strikes and they get their outs on time. And that just puts them ahead of the curve against so many teams, because that's just such a big deal about college baseball, is those experienced teams that can do that.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that people neglect to really think about is that with the revolution and all the training and programs that you can do to throw harder, 95 is the new 90, right? Yeah. Like, throwing 90 to 94 isn't rare anymore. And it's funny, I always get a kick, you watch some of these videos, and 90's always been the number. That's the benchmark, and that's the one that everyone in the facility jumps off their the bench at, and all that. And it's great, but that's going to get you hammered these days. Like, throwing 90 and just blowing it out to throw 90 doesn't do what it used to do, because everyone's seen that now. I watched, a bunch of college baseball throughout the weekend. We went over and watched OU play Auburn on Friday, saw Texas and Rice on Saturday. And there's just an abundance of guys that throw over 90. Every guy coming in almost, it felt like, threw over 90. But the guys that really were successful were the guys that threw strikes and pitched. Yeah. Right. And again, if you have the choice of having the stuff or not having the stuff, you want the stuff, but you gotta compete and throw strikes too. But yeah, going back to Texas, this is probably the best team that Texas had since definitely probably 2010. They, like you said, they make all the plays. They have experience on the mound. They've got a great catcher. They're strong up the middle with Faltine and Daly. And that wins. The teams that won this week didn't make mistakes. Yeah. And that's not to say they were perfect. But you can tell the teams that really put a high premium on getting outs on time and doing it the right way, and that wins a lot of baseball games.
I think last year's team reminded me, Texas team reminded me so much of 2014, so much, down to the very end, where it's like, man, finished third, but could have easily gotten into that national title series, and I think they would have won it if they would have got there. I think this group reminds me of probably 2010, where it's like, okay, come off an Omaha trip that maybe felt a little bit early, but very, very that good of a team. bring a lot of those guys back, a lot of that veteran approach, know how to play the game, that sort of thing. Like, and that 2010 team just ran through the Big 12 like nobody's run through the Big 12 before. So
we went over a month without losing a game.
Yeah, that's crazy. And like some of the losses in Big 12 play like were fluky. I remember there was like a Youngman start where he walked like 6 or 7 guys. And I think it was a really weird weather day, which was like, that was like 15 or 20% of his season walk total. Like was it like, you know, like there's even some of the losses are just fluky, but it's just college. Like if you watch college, and that's one thing I you know, wanted to bring up too. Like, I don't know if it's because of the absence of Major League Baseball, or maybe my Twitter timeline is just kind of more aligned this way now. Like, you know how Twitter is, like if you like certain things, it'll just start shooting things in your feed. But I thought that the amount of people that were talking about college baseball to me was at an all-time high. And I don't know if that's because there's more streaming going on. I don't know if it's because of the MLB lockout deal, or maybe it's just that the interest is growing in the sport. I'm not quite sure, but I thought that the energy and the conversation surrounding the game was higher than I can ever recall it being.
No doubt. I think it's just got to be a combination of all of the above, but you definitely saw some people who weren't familiar, but are big baseball people. They weren't totally familiar with the college game and who's good and all that, but you saw them talking about it on Twitter and, you know, getting clips of it posted on Twitter. But yeah, it's fun to see. I mean, a lot of really good baseball, but I was a little disappointed in Tanner Witt on Sunday. You know, he was the only starter for Team Bish. Yeah, he's the only starter for Team Bish that gave up an earned run this weekend, because we had Jake Bennett went 6 shutout, Pete Hansen went 6 shutout, Chaz Martinez went, I think, 4 2/3 and with no earned runs. But Tanner gave up that one first inning home run and just, you know, kept me from having a 0 ERA out of my starters.
You probably got to cut him now. I think that's the move. Is you've got to tell him he's got to go to the portal. But by the way, did you see how many runs LSU scored this weekend?
51.
You need a calculator to come up with the amount of runs they scored. Like, I mean, I know it's Maine. Like, poor Maine rolled in there, and but man, like those guys are gonna hit. They're gonna hit.
I went and looked at their stats yesterday, and like the guys that were hitting like 333 were at the very bottom of the stat page. Like Cade Doty had 12 RBIs this weekend.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, like we said a couple weeks ago, if they can find any pitching, they're going to be in Omaha. I mean, their numbers, I mean, like you said, it's Maine, but you still got to do it. I mean, there was plenty of other big name programs that are ranked very high that didn't get it done against similar types of programs, but those numbers that lineup, I mean, they had Gavin Dugas didn't start all 3 games, and he hit 13 home runs and had 66 RBIs last year. And he didn't start the whole weekend. I mean, it's crazy. He started, but he didn't start all 3 games is what I mean. But yeah, Peyton Graham hit a home run. Ultimately, probably the game winner against Auburn on Friday. Jake Bennett looked really good. Godman looked good out of the pen. OU had a good weekend, taking 2 of 3. Arizona swung the bat a little bit. I was, you know, I'm always curious with these new coaches, how they open up, and Chip Hale had them going. The Wildcats swung the bat this weekend, but it's gonna be
that LSU team. I think is it's like perfect timing for that kind of LSU team, because I don't think the SEC is going to have as many dominant arms as they have. Typically it's like, okay, on Friday you're facing a top 2 round guy, whether it's this year or the next draft, whatever, that's who he's going to be. I don't know if there are many of those guys in the league this year. And that LSU team might just hammer the ball so much that like your entire pitching staff's on fumes by the time Sunday rolls around, and those guys put up a 12 spot on you to win a series. But but then again, like we kind of wondered what Arkansas staff was like, and then Hagen Smith, I think is a true freshman, came out and just absolutely shoved it for them from the left side. So we'll see, but yeah, it's some really exciting performances. Shout out to the Noles. 3-0 series sweep for the Florida State Seminoles against James Madison. Dominated that series, and TCU opened up winning their series. Tennessee looks like they've got a lot of talent with that squad as well. So a lot of strong performances out of the gate, and unsurprisingly, a lot of very veteran teams came out and played well from the jump.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a fun season. There's a lot of unknown. There's some of the teams that typically are at the top of the polls. They have talent, but they're a little bit inexperienced. So it's going to be fun to watch. Like you said, the SEC's like that a lot. They a lot of big time talent left, a lot of experience left. But you see what happened to Mississippi State. That happens every year. Some of these West Coast teams that come in and, they have good weather and they play good fundamental baseball, and, they're ready to go, and they don't make mistakes,
right.
And
they know how to play the game.
Yeah.
Did you see Tommy White, the freshman from NC State? Did you see his stats?
No, but I knew they were ridiculous. I don't know what they were specifically. But.
So in a 3-game series, his season OPS right now is 2.402. He hit 643 with 5 homers and 12 RBI in 3 games. Like, imagine being a freshman and that's how you start your career. Like, it reminds me of this level was not even close to that, but when Eric Weiss hit it felt like he hit 600 for a month to begin his freshman year.
Well, I think he was he reached base his first 11 at bats of his career.
Yeah, it was crazy.
But Brooks Marlowe hit 2 home runs off Marcus
Stroman in the rain. I will never forget that. In the rain, it was typical awful February weather. It was cold, it was damp, it was raining, and Marcus Stroman was throwing 94 with a good slider. Like, it wasn't like Marcus Stroman wasn't throwing well. And Brooks Marlowe hits 2 tanks off of him with the old fences and it was I think it was the bad bats before they'd really even corrected him that much. And he hits 2 tanks off Marcus Stroman. But yeah, shout out to Tommy White, NC State. They get the sweep behind probably the most insane opening weekend for a freshman I've ever seen in college baseball. 5 homers and a 2.402 OPS to open the season. That is something. But that's a weekend's work. But yeah, I just felt like the energy around the sport was higher than I think I've ever seen it. And I'm really excited that so many of these games are on streaming platforms now, because, you can watch it on your phone anywhere you go now, like I could be in a tournament between games, I'll flip on, this matchup, and here get some eyes on some guys and kind of kill some time while I'm waiting for my next matchup. But I really do feel like this sport is so close to just kind of breaking through to be more of a revenue sport. And when that happens, man, it could really be a game changer. But I think people are kind of catching on that there's a ton of talent that you can find everywhere, but also there's just a different energy around the game. That one highlight of the guy that hit the tank and he got the bat up like he was looking like I mean, you don't see that stuff in pro baseball. It's one of the reasons why I like Dominican Winter League and the Caribbean World Series is you see that sort of energy all the time. But Ivan Melendez hits a tank and he's feeling it off the bat, because he should have felt it off the bat when at 450 feet, and the Titanic song plays as he's rounding the base. Like you just get those sort of things in this level that you don't really get anywhere else. And I think that's one of the reasons why people can kind of gravitate towards it. So looking forward to definitely following this as the season progresses for sure. But you get anything else to wrap up with? You got anything? Where are you planning to camp yourself at this week?
Well, I had a genius little schedule mapped out, and I was going to see 3 games Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Maybe 4 on Saturday, depending upon what happens with this weather. But like you did last week, I'm not going to jinx it. But
yeah,
ultimately, that the Chase Shores start will dictate where I go for pretty much everything. But I was planning on opening the real season with Prosper versus Lovejoy. So Lucas Davenport, face Aiden Smith plays Mississippi State plays for Lovejoy. So a couple really, really good players in that game, and then heading over to see Shores. But we'll see. We'll see what the weather allows us to do. Hope for the best.
Have you been to Midland before?
Yes.
I don't know if I've ever been. Like,
yeah, I hope I don't have to.
There might be a
nothing
5-tool
against Midland.
Trip.
Yeah, nothing against Midland, but it'll allow a lot more stuff to open up if we don't have to make it out to Midland. But if we have to, we have to.
Chase, if you're listening, just know we're gonna see you pitch come hell or high water. We're gonna make it work. So
high water and high wind.
And freezing
high snow,
whatever, and whatever it is. Like I was messaging with Travis Secor to figure out, when he was going to pitch this week, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm scheduled for this day, but the weather might change that." And I was like, "Oh yeah, Thursday could get a."
Well, talking about another one. Travis, when he pitches in 2 weeks, that may mess up my entire plan for that weekend, because the Round Rock plays at Rockwall in a tournament week 3.
So the March 10th week.
I have and I'm scheduled to knock out a bunch, but then I looked a little closer and I was like, wait a minute, if he's throwing at Rockwall, I ain't missing that. So
whenever you get,
I went back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
If he throws that game, I have a plan B, or a plan A is he doesn't throw that game. So then I get to stay on schedule and knock out all kinds of guys. But I might end up having to be a little bit selfish and have to go see him throw.
Well, yeah, you can't. It's a backyard game. Like you can't ever turn down the opportunity to see
I'm
something
so
like
glad
that when it's that close to home.
I calculated it. I could not leave Heath or Rockwall and see almost a third of our lists throughout this season.
Wow.
There's a bunch of Houston and Central Texas teams that come up for tournament, and it's the beauty of the turf.
Yeah.
You can host tournaments and run as many games through as you want, but so we'll see. But
so exciting weeks ahead, man. As the season kicks off, the college season and the high school season, those ones are officially underway, and the games count now. So looking forward to weather permitting a great weekend, and kind of penciled in what I plan to do Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and it'll surely get disrupted by something, but at least it's planned out right now. And I think it's this first pitch Syntex tournament is probably the best on paper high school tournament that's been in this area since I can remember. I mean, you're talking Lubbock Cooper and Keller and Rockwall Heath and the Woodlands and Round Rock, and Jalen Flores' club at Brandeis, and it's just
you're saying it right now. You're saying it right now. You learned.
I had to think about it. I'm trying to, in my head is like, okay, I got to say it this way before I say it. But even those guys, I'll end up seeing. I think I'm going to go to that San Antonio Raising Cane's Classic, which I'm going to, fingers crossed, we can get some of that sauce on there.
Chicken fingers crossed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. That it's time to wrap up the podcast when we get one of those. But I'll see those guys a bunch down there as well. So yeah, tournaments are coming and district games are happening too, which is kind of crazy to me, but district play did open some places, and we're going to get our eyes on a lot of really good teams, a lot of really good players, and it matters now. So we'll see who's out able to compete, throw strikes, and win some games. But with that, let's wrap up the episode of the 5-Tool Baseball Podcast, episode 46. Again, get to Podbean, get to Apple Podcasts. It's on my agenda to get this thing on the Spotify at some point. I know we're publishing a lot of these on YouTube as well. Make sure you're following all our social media accounts. Or, I feel like every single day we've got some cool new highlight videos or something that's going around from the various games that we're at. So until then, I hope your weather cooperates. Stay safe. Take care.